Father, as we come before your throne of grace, Lord, you are a good God, and you are a good Father. We commit ourselves in your hands, Lord, as your dear children. We treasure you. We know that you treasure us much more than we treasure you, but in the best possible extent from our perspective, we treasure you, Lord. When you met Abraham many centuries ago, you said, I am your exceedingly great reward. You are our reward. To see you, to have you, to be filled with your Spirit, and to know your Son deeply is our greatest privilege and honor in our lives, Lord. So we come before your throne of grace with that attitude. We say thank you for you. And Lord, today, of course, training, you know all things. You don't need introduction, you know all things. So commit all things in your hands, and we pray for your rich blessings upon everyone who is listening, everyone who is here in the venue, at the venue here, and also everyone who is virtually connected. We pray for your Spirit to lead them, guide each one of us. Especially me, Lord, for me to speak words as led through your Spirit, so your name might be glorified in and through all things. We commit all things in your hands. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen. 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 All right. Brother JC is here. JC.
Hey, he's alive.
But I think we'll, in the interest of the training group here, we'll keep going while JC connects. And so hopefully sometime soon things should be live on SOC also. Cool. The topic for today is why trust the Bible. That's the topic for today. Just a couple of minutes broader background. Of course, we are in Operation Stephen Evangelist Training Program. 13 modules. Last month we went through the overview of the Bible, and this month it's about the topic why we trust the Bible. And just to give a brief introduction on this, essentially different Christians might have come to God in slightly different ways. For some it might have been a conviction of sin, and therefore when someone preaches, they might have suddenly clicked in their mind. For some it might have been, I really need to know if this is true, historically, scientifically, and all those things. That might be the approach someone else might take. Whereas for someone else, it might just be, I'd like to find love, true love, genuine love. Someone who genuinely cares about me. And when they come across God, read His Word, they might realize, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So different people might have come to God because of different reasons. Some a bit more rational, some a bit more emotional, but all of them equally valid for the specific individual. But that's where I'd like to just add one more point, which is, regardless of the route that we have specifically taken, an individual might have specifically taken, what needs to be understood is that after he has known God for the first time, I think we need to go through a process where we cover the other areas also. For instance, I might have wanted to know genuine love, and I have found out that in Jesus, through a conviction of my emotions and spirit. Even if that is how I come to Jesus Christ, I should still progress through the remaining things. I should make sure historically, scientifically, things are still alright. I should make sure emotionally things are still alright. Morally, through the conviction of our conscience, things are still alright. And the reason I say that should be the process is, because we might have come to Christ, but if we don't ask the right questions after having come to Christ and find right answers, later on people might end up confusing us. You know, people go to uni, they get all sorts of questions asked, and then they know, you know what, this is all fairy tale. And the reason is many Christians haven't invested in all the other areas also on top of the initial introduction to Jesus Christ. So that's the broad backdrop. With that in mind, we are looking more today at the intellectual side. Historically, logically, philosophically, does my conviction, or is my conviction solid? Is the Christian view still solid? That's the kind of question we are asking. That is the connotation when we say trust here. More of an intellectual thing, because all these are important. Cool. And last module we saw the Bible, of course, is the greatest book in history, and now we are looking for evidence that back up the Bible. Now, so that's a brief introduction. With that having said, let me make a couple of more points here. So, of course, people are watching online, and I'm going to once in a while check how things are in the live chat. People are watching online, and there are a few people in the video also. And the point is, we're going to have 4 1.5 hours sessions. 4 sessions, and actually 3 sessions, 1.5 hours, and then the last one alone is 1 hour. And we do have the first break. The break after the first session is a lunch break. It's lunchtime in London, so that's lunch break. So that will be half an hour. The remaining breaks would all be 15 minutes. And you should find the schedule roughly on the live setup that has been done earlier on the channel. Now, in terms of questions, what we would do is I'd essentially open up the floor for 15 minutes of questions in each of the sessions. Towards the end normally, but the first session alone I'm going to do somewhere 3/4 of the way through because of some special reason. But people who have questions, I prefer for those questions to be emailed to or perhaps WhatsApp in our group chat. For the trainees who are officially registered, please WhatsApp your questions on the group chat, and perhaps one of you can keep track of the questions that are coming through. And for any general chat, let's go through the live chat on YouTube. So any general comments, live chat, but any specific questions that you might want to ask and when you have them, please WhatsApp the question in our group chat. So once we get to the Q&A session, we can get to talk. This one? Okay, 1 second. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord, praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah? Praise the Lord. Cool. Better, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool, okay. Alright, okay. So the first session, the topic for the first session is Old Testament, and there too specifically we're going to look at what I call the easy parts. For those who have seen the documentation which has been sent to you, so essentially the first session we're going to be looking at what I call the easy parts, and then an introduction to the difficult parts. With that, we'll sort of wrap up the first session. What are the easy parts in regards to historical evidences for the Bible and Jesus? What are the easy parts? Of course, here specifically we're talking about the Old Testament. The easy parts are, as you might realize once we begin going through some of these things, what happened during the actual monarchic period of Israel. Maybe I'll take one step back and just remind ourselves the different phases of history that the Bible covers. You might remember the first part is the creation, old world going up to Noah's flood and so on, and then you begin seeing the genesis of nations, origins of different nations. One of the nations is, of course, the nation of Israel. It begins with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob in the book of Genesis. And then once you go through that, you find the nation of Israel as a large people group being slaves in Egypt, and then essentially becoming a nation after Exodus. Exodus is the start, beginning point of the nation. But Exodus and then Judges, during those periods, they still don't have a king. It's not a monarchy. God was still a king. So it was a theocracy which was in play. God was on a day-to-day basis sort of interacting with the nation. And only later on the nation of Israel asked for a king. That's when the monarchic period begins. But initially, King Saul, King David, and King Solomon, and briefly, very briefly, King Rehoboam, they were kings of a united kingdom. One kingdom, four of them were kings. But briefly after Rehoboam took over the kingship, essentially the kingdom was divided. And that's when you begin seeing the divided kingdom. Northern Israel, southern Judah. Roughly, in terms of archaeology and rest of history, this period is what we would call the beginning point of Iron Age. Roughly beginning around 1000 BC. Plus 100 or so years is when the divided kingdom begins. Yeah, monarchy begins around 1000 BC, but there too, initial couple of rulers take up about 150 years or so between them. So that's where the divided monarchies begin. Northern Israel, southern Judah. And that is where we're going to jump in terms of evidences. And the reason is, beginning from the Iron Age, as we might go through right now, you will find out that the archaeological evidences that we have are plenty. So that's very, very important. No arguments, no quibbles. We find someone in the Bible, we find the same person elsewhere in archaeological artifacts. We find some very important historical events in the Bible, and we find corresponding records, at least in the important cases, in extra-biblical sources. So one-to-one mapping in terms of history. So that's where things are very easy. So let's quickly go through the table, which you should be seeing on the screen right now. So it's a divided kingdom already. So on the left, you find the king of northern Israel, and the second column from the left is king of southern Judah. Because it's divided kingdom right from the start, both have kings, respective kings. And then the third column gives you details about any additional kings who are interacting with the nation of Israel at that stage. And then finally some comments about particular events or whatever. Now what you would find is, if you go through the entire column on the left, the leftmost column, northern Israel, you would find 19 different kings. Northern Israel had 19 kings throughout their history after the kingdom divided, 19 different kings from 9 different dynasties, 9 different family groups. Whereas southern Judah had 20 different kings, but all from the family of David, only one dynasty. And this might ring a bell to you, of course, because the Bible obviously says the eternal kingdom of David would be occupied by the Messiah, the descendant of David. So it's supposed to be only David's family sitting on the throne. So that's where, if you see on the left, for example, Jeroboam, I've given a prefix 1 to just indicate the dynasty index. So Jeroboam and Nadab are part of the same dynasty, and therefore both of them have 1. Baasha is a different dynasty. Baasha was not the son of Nadab, whereas Nadab was the son of Jeroboam. So Baasha gets a different number 2. Elah is a son of Baasha, so both of them get 2, the same number, second dynasty, and so on. So if you follow the numbers on the left, you'll find only numbers going up to 9, even though there are 19 kings. So just to quickly run through, you see Jeroboam, Nadab, Baasha, Elah, Zimri, and I think Omri, Ahab is a popular name because he was especially wicked. All the kings on the left hand side, the kings of Israel, all of them were wicked. All of them, there's no exception. The second column, kings of Judah, I'm talking about after the kingdom divided, of course. In the kingdom of Judah, you had a few good rulers, but plenty were still evil, but few good. And that is the reason you would find out in scriptures that the kingdom of Judah survived a bit longer under their own self-rule than the kingdom of Israel. Because they messed up big time and there was no hope whatsoever, God gave the nation of Israel, northern Israel, over to foreign rulers sooner than the kingdom of Judah. But even kingdom of Judah had very wicked kings, some of them very wicked kings, and therefore eventually God gave them up also to foreign rulers, and in this case would be Babylon. Okay, so you find that kind of detail as you scroll through. In the interest of time, because we lost 15 or so minutes at the start, I'm not going to browse through quickly now. What I'm rather going to do is just point out the structure of a few other things here. So there you find the kings of Israel and Judah. In the third column, you find any foreign king who are recorded in scriptures. Either recorded in scriptures or they record people of scriptures in a significant way. Even if the Bible doesn't talk about them, they talk about people in the Bible, and therefore they find a place here. So there, as you can see, you find Egypt there, Shishak. You also find Syria. So if you go through these things, what you'll find is, you'll find in the Iron Age, you'll find Egypt, you'll find Syria, and then you'll find Assyria. Before going to Assyria, you'll find Moab, and then you'll find Assyria, and then also Babylon. Those were the 5 major kingdoms which interacted with the divided nation of Israel during the Iron Age. And there too, what you would find is, one of the things we must appreciate is Israel and Judah were just kingdoms, and so was Syria and Moab. Whereas when we move on to Assyria and Babylon, when they were interacting with the nation of Israel, they were already empires. And the difference, of course, is they are multi-kingdoms. Kingdoms of multiple different people groups. And that's where we begin seeing world empires beginning to show up in human history. The first proper world empire, which was spread across widely, not entire world, widely, was Assyria. And then you find Babylon, and then of course we find the Medo-Persians, and then Greeks come in, Alexander the Great, and then Rome by the time of Jesus. And then going forward, we had a couple of other Persian Empire, the Arab Islamic Empire, and so on, also coming up. And then finally, let's say the Esther decades. Ending with the Esther decades, we had the British Empire and so on. So that's how we trace empires right through history. So that's the third column, foreign rulers. And then in the fourth column, you'll find some comments. For example, during the time of Rehoboam and Jeroboam, essentially Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem. And the reason Jerusalem, of course, is the capital of Judah, and the reason he came up against Jerusalem was because Jeroboam became friends with Shishak. And he said, implicitly it appears, it doesn't say it explicitly, but implicitly it seems as if because of Jeroboam's sort of influence, Shishak was interested in the affairs of the nation of Israel. Jeroboam was someone who fled the nation of Israel during Solomonic times, taking shelter with Shishak. So he took shelter there, and then when Solomon was dead, because Solomon was a mighty ruler here, and of course David was even mighty when it comes to warfare, but Solomon inherited the benefits of that mostly, and so he was alright. And so in that kind of detail you find in the last column. What I'm going to do now is quickly, 11:39. So quickly I'm going to skip through these things. The details, particular details here you can verify or study in detail later on, using the handout that you have received. But the quick point I'd really like to make here is, you saw Egypt earlier, you saw Syria earlier, Assyria begins interacting. Syria, Assyria, around similar time, but Assyria going on for a bit longer because they gathered pace. They began to be more and more powerful as time progressed. Syria began to vanish away from the historical setting. Egypt also was interacting. Egypt, of course, is one of the kingdoms which had a very, very long history, and they came. Their history came right through to the Iron Age, going to, of course, we know about Rome capturing Egypt, and even before that, Greece, the Ptolemaic rulers, Greece in Egypt and so on. So we find Assyria, Egypt, Babylon coming on the stage a bit later than Assyria, but then gaining strength even over Assyria later. And so here's where some of the prophecies which are in scriptures are very interesting. The point is, when a prophet prophesied about Babylon capturing Israel, southern Judah, Babylon was a nobody in the world stage. At that time it was Assyria who was a significant player. So in other words, the prophets of the Bible prophesied in a significant manner to an extent when a nation was a nobody in world stage, they were able to clearly predict such and such kingdom is going to come, develop strength, and then going to come and capture you. So that's the nature of prophecies we have in scripture. So now, quickly, I'd like to just mention about a few things which are in the fourth column. And I'm just trying to see. So what I do is perhaps I'll skip all this and go right through the attestations, the artifacts themselves. And as we go through the artifacts, we look at some details briefly about the particular entry in the table. Kut monolith is from Assyria. The emperor who sort of commissioned this was Shalmaneser III, who is not recorded by name in the Bible. But still we're going to look at him purely because this is the, not the earliest, but one of the earliest of archaeological artifacts which specifically mention the name Israel. So if you want to know when the latest point, ignoring every other artifact, if you need to date the latest point at which Israel came on world stage, you know it was at the latest during the time of Shalmaneser III. Of course, it could be much earlier, like how the Bible points. We're going to go through that. But the latest point, no one dare date the nation of Israel after Shalmaneser III is, I guess, the point now. And the reason I'm stressing that is as we go through some of these artifacts, that thing should always be in your mind. The artifacts that we're going to see during session 1 are all going to post-date this particular one. But then when we come to session 2, after we look at some of the introduction to some challenges, then we're going to clearly make some very bold statements. And at that point, that principle is going to be very useful. So, Kut monolith, Shalmaneser III mentions a king of Israel by name, Ahab, and he also calls him someone from the nation of Israel. So he identifies him as a king of the nation of Israel. As you can see, there were plenty of other kings who were fighting against, who fought a particular battle called Battle at Kaka at that time, and this is a record of that. Tel Stile, this comes from Syria. Like I said earlier, Syria also entered the nation of Israel. It comes from Syria. The king at that time of Syria, this is most likely from who is called Hazael, king of Syria, who, by the way, is recorded in scriptures. And the importance of this particular stele, by the way, a stele is nothing but a pillar. A pillar, but this might not look like a pillar to you purely because it was all broken. There were foreign influences, much of the Arab Bedouin rule and so on, demolished many things because they wanted to wipe out history. There were plenty of other people who wanted to demolish history, and therefore many things were demolished. And of course things could have been demolished during the natural course of action also, course of time also. So what we have remaining are just portions, tiny portions in some cases, of what was supposed to be perhaps a large pillar. Now, this particular one, Tel Stile, as you can see, maybe I don't know how clear this picture is to some of you. This is from the internet, free, open source sort of pictures, not my personal ones. Some of the ones I have personally taken in British Museum, therefore should be a better resolution. But I don't know if you can see some writing there. Tiny writing, yeah. So that sort of writing, there are 13 lines of writing in this particular stele, and if you see some of these things within bracket, they are assumed. And the reason is, as you can see, they are not continuous. We have broken pieces. So what archaeologists do is when they find such an artifact, they find the actual text they can see. And then in the historical context of what they already know, they try and fill in some of the remaining portions. But thankfully for us, this particular stele is very useful in that you don't have to do any magic work for you to see this stele refers to the King David by name. And also, of course, it uses the expression House of David, Beit David, House of David, which is very important because it clearly establishes the fact that this particular guy called David, even if you never read the Bible before, this particular guy called David was of an importance enough to suggest that people were keeping track of his house, his lineage, his particular descendants. And of course we know from scriptures he was a king of the nation of Judah and so on. As you can see, this is talking about a particular king. This is assumed because of the historical event which is recorded here. The Bible records this event, something very close to this event, and therefore because the Bible mentions and a few other sources mention, you can sort of put them all together, and that's where people understand this is Jehoram, king of the house of David, and so on. So you find David referred to here, and you also find the nation of Israel referred to by name here. So that's Tel Stile. Mesha Stile, the third one, is from Moab. Ammon, Moab, you might have heard, two children that Lot had with his own daughters, and the descendants of them are Ammonites and Moabites. And from Moabites, Ammonites and Moabites are really the modern day Jordan sort of area. And there, Mesha was a king who is recorded in scriptures, who was actually a vassal. Someone was paying tributes to King Ahab and Omri, but soon after Ahab died, he really took independence and then fought against. So that's from him, Mesha Stile, and he goes on a bit of a rant about things that happened in his kingdom. He explains why his kingdom was initially a vassal kingdom, others were more powerful, and then he goes on to say, now I have become more powerful, sort of thing. But like you see, Moab, Omri, king of Israel, who is the father of Ahab, by the way. Omri has been mentioned a couple of times there, and then Israel again, and then more importantly, you see Yahweh. So he even mentions the name of our God explicitly in his stone. And he'd also talk about his own God. So, because for him the fight is between not just the people but also between the gods. So that's one of the again not the earliest but one of the earliest. Certainly in Iron Age this is the earliest explicit outside of the Bible. Of course the Bible is phenomenal. I'll come to that in a minute. But outside of the Bible, the earliest Iron Age artifact which refers to Yahweh by name. And then a couple of other places. Is it also talking about David? We're not quite sure because, like you can see, the final D is not there because it's so much so destroyed. This is one of those things which Bedouins are supposed to have destroyed big time. Moabs today. Because it's so destroyed, you can't confirm, but it's speculative that even David is mentioned here. Okay, Shalmaneser III. This is in the British Museum. Shalmaneser III. Essentially, it's a four-sided structure. So this is not a stele. This is what is called an obelisk. A four-sided pillar. In this particular case, it's black, made from I think black granite. So it's called black obelisk of Shalmaneser III. By the way, the Kut monolith is behind that in the British Museum. But this particular thing, I don't know if you can see. Do you see strips here? You see that roughly here? But if you look at the second strip from the top on this side, on one of the four sides, you'd find that unfortunately the flash didn't help us here. Things could have been much clearer. But do you roughly see a man bow down? And do you see someone standing up straight? And do you roughly see some sort of weird writing, marking? This is what is called cuneiform writing, by the way, which is every letter is a combination of some sort of triangular, multiple triangular things, where the triangular impressions are made by some special sort of sticks sort of thing. But of course this is stone, so it's not sticks here, but the idea is similar sticks were used with clay tablets and other things before, and that sort of idea has been replicated on a stone here, cuneiform writing. The guy who is bowing down here is a king called Jehu. A king called Jehu, and that is Shalmaneser III. This particular incident is not recorded, Shalmaneser III is not recorded by name in the Bible, but what we find is Jehu is clearly recorded as son of Omri, Omri being the father of Abraham. So, but in technicality, when we go through the Bible, Jehu is not actually a biological son. Jehu is not actually a biological son of Omri, but the fact of the matter is Omri is a very popular king, and Jehu was the first in the next dynasty after Omri, and the way in which he captured kingship from Omri's dynasty is very interesting. He had to murder people to get on the throne because of the special situation. Essentially, for a foreign ruler, it's easy for him either to misunderstand that he was actually a son of Omri, or to see him as a descendant of Omri, sitting on the throne of Omri, not in a different dynasty's throne, but Omri's throne, sitting there. So anyway, point is, he was subsequently captured by Shalmaneser III, as this particular artifact says, and therefore he is bowing down here, paying tribute. If you go around the obelisk on the other four sides, other three sides, you will find the things that servants of him had carried to present to Shalmaneser III. So those are the tribute that he was paying. Now, okay, next one, Adad Nirari Stele. This one uses the term Samarian, or Samarian, someone from Samaria, an area called Samaria, which is a rough equivalent to the nation of Israel. For the first time in cuneiform, and the king at that time was Jehoash. The Jehoash has been recorded here. Zakur Stele. Bar-Hadad, which is the Aramaic form for Ben-Hadad, the Hebrew form. Ben-Hadad and Hazael, both of them are Syrian kings who interacted with the nation of Israel very deeply in the affairs of the nation of Israel. If you go to the time of Elisha, if you know anything about Naaman, the leper, then he's a reasonably popular figure because Elisha asked him to go dip himself in a muddy water and he wasn't too pleased, but God anyway healed him because of what the prophet said. So again, he is a Syrian. Naaman was a Syrian commander, and the kings who are operating from Syria were Ben-Hadad, Hazael, and then Ben-Hadad, his son. Both his predecessor and the guy who came after him are called Ben-Hadad. Apart from him, a couple of other kings also referred to by name in the Bible, Hadadezer and Rezin. The point is, they have been mentioned by name here. Kala inscriptions, Tiglath-Pileser, when Tiglath-Pileser, so Shalmaneser III was the first to get a tribute from Jehu, and then Tiglath-Pileser came harassing the nation of Israel. He's an Assyrian king, emperor, and he mentions by name, actually must be 2 or 3 kings. Oh no, yes, yeah. My eyesight isn't clear from here. So he mentions by name 3 kings who were towards the tail end of the nation of Israel. So you see those people there. Okay. Tiglath-Pileser, in British Museum we have artifacts to show that he has Israelite prisoners captured. I don't know if you see those people there. How do people today, historians today, archaeologists today understand these are Israelite people? In archaeology, in various artifacts, you find a pattern. To depict an Arab, they use a particular way of sort of engraving. Facial features, caps, hats that they wear, clothing, and all those things. You'll see patterns between Arabs, differentiated between Arabs, Assyrians, Syrians, Medo-Persians, as far as even Indians and so on. If you go to British Museum, the Persian section, there's a very long relief, I think wall relief, where you see I think something like 10 or 15 different groups depicted in sort of unique ways, enough for people to identify them clearly. And that's from Persian times, but here from the features used we understand these are Israelite soldiers. Now, I don't know if that's visible from here, a few people impaled on sticks. That's the kind of cruelty the Assyrians were up to during their time, because they had enormous power. And God of the Bible actually talks about this. He says, in the Old Testament we find passages which talk about the fact that they won't have any mercy for you and stuff like that. And we see the details of what was happening. And we also now see why Jonah wasn't too keen on going to Nineveh, especially with the idea in mind that God might not do what he said he would do. Now, even if he did what he said he would do, think about what would happen if he ended up in the hands of a king or a prominent soldier. And if he didn't do what he said he would do, I mean, this multiplied maybe by 1,000 times was what Jonah might have been afraid of. So we see that. I'm going to skip a few things here. Of course, you can read the details of some of these, but what you must already see emerging is the Bible says some stuff about history, about interaction between nations, and extra biblical sources reasonably talk about similar stuff. Multiple names of people, events recorded, and so on. So you begin seeing a nice pattern. So no qualms, people don't have to argue much. Even secular historians, even those who hate the Bible, are really on the same page in regards to these things. And that's why I'm calling the first 3/4 of this session the easy bits. Not easy because we don't have to learn anything. It's not easy because of that, but easy because we don't have to argue anything. It's just a matter of mentioning a few things and everyone could be, as long as they get to know the details, they could all be on the same page. Similarly, I'm going to skip a few names there, but names of artifacts, but from the land of Judah, Jehoahaz, Tiglath-Pileser goes on to talk about, I think it's Rezin here, but who is recorded as Rezin in the Bible, in English Bible, who is considered to be Rehiano in Tiglath-Pileser's language, Assyrian. Similarly, Shema being a servant of Jeroboam, not Jeroboam who came soon after Solomon, but this is another Jeroboam number 2, who was a very, very popular, very prosperous king of the nation of Israel. In some of the prophetic books, you see indications of how Israel gave into all sorts of wickedness, and one of the reasons shown for that is because you are rich. God didn't trouble you, and therefore you drank wine, you were enjoying, and therefore you were ending up being wicked. And part of the reason is prosperity during his time also. Josiah is referred to as someone who got leprosy in the Bible, and you find a plaque in his tomb which actually says not to be opened. Don't open. We know why that might be the case. Now Ahaz, Bula, I haven't got a picture here, but Ahaz is a name, another king of Judah, referred to by name. Hezekiah, another king of Judah. Maybe I'll just spend a couple of minutes on the Hezekiah related things, not on Shebna, but Taylor prism and an octagonal prism, and one more thing, because something detailed happened here which is recorded in scriptures, which is actually captured outside of scriptures also. Briefly, the story goes something like, during the time of Hezekiah, Assyria had already captured northern Israel. Now they're trying to capture southern Judah also. You find this particular sort of hassling in the historical books and also in Prophet Isaiah. You find parallel records. So he'd come and hassle King Hezekiah, who is a reasonably good king. So he comes into Livestream and says, "Oh, you know what, I'm going to capture you." And he lays siege to the city of Jerusalem, and he threatens, "You better pay me tribute." Hezekiah then goes on getting gold, silver, even from the temple, even scratching from the door and stuff like that, getting all these tribute, and then giving all of that to the emperor, Sennacherib. But after receiving all of that, he still threatened, because he thought I could get more. So what he said was, "You better officially become my vassal. It's not just this time, you need to give me regular tribute," was the idea. So Hezekiah was now not sure what to do. He's a godly king, not as good as David, but still reasonably good. If it was David would have inquired of the Lord right at the start and would have demolished. He wouldn't have cared who the guy was, whether he was an emperor or not. "You better don't come into my territory," would have been what David's mindset would have been. But Hezekiah wasn't as strong as that. But now that he knows that he would be captured, he now is seeking for spiritual advice, and that's where Isaiah comes in. And Isaiah would prophesy, the guy would not shoot an arrow. Emperor Sennacherib, King Sennacherib, would not even shoot an arrow into Jerusalem. He would return back without even shooting that. That would be the prophecy, which would be a very, very unlikely thing to happen, because an emperor had come a few hundred miles with several thousand soldiers. After having captured all the cities, all the towns outside of Jerusalem, Lachish was where he was encamped in at that time. Now his final thing was Jerusalem. Just one last bit, and Hezekiah wasn't very strong. It's just a matter of a few days, get it done, go back. Why would he not shoot an arrow and then return without doing anything to Jerusalem? But that was the prophecy. That kind of precision was there in the prophetic ministry of the Old Testament prophets, and also in the New Testament prophets. You see that exactly what he prophesied actually happened. And the way it happened was, while Sennacherib was encamped in Lachish, still threatening Jerusalem, he heard a rumor about an Egyptian pharaoh who was actually based in Ethiopia. So he was one of the southern Ethiopian, pharaoh of Ethiopian descent. He heard a rumor that Tirhakah, who was that particular pharaoh, who is also recorded in the Bible, was going to attack Assyria while he was away from Assyria. So he heard the rumor, now, and therefore he was now sort of rattled a bit. And then he sort of hurries up his messengers to say, go threaten Hezekiah even more. So we get it done in a couple of days and then we return back soon. And what happens is, while that was still happening, the word of God says, an angel entered into the camp, killed 185,000 soldiers in a single night. And that made the emperor return back. You see, most of his army was wiped out. He can't do much, so he had to go back. Now, this is the supernatural event recorded in the Bible. The sort of natural things recorded outside of the Bible are, as a natural thing recorded in the Bible are also the fact that when his father came back, two of his sons weren't happy. For what we can guess roughly, but essentially they ended up murdering the father and running away. And a third son, Esarhaddon, essentially took the throne after the two sons. The point is, because of the 185,000 dead, he rushed back, but soon after he rushed back, he was dead. And the other sources don't explain why, but the Bible gives an indication, and that was because of the death of 185,000. So we can put pieces together and say, well, they might have been upset, saying, wait a second, what's happening here? Oh, most of our army is lost, and so on. So that kind of thing happened. Terracotta Foundation document gives records the fact that in Lachish, the Sennacherib was encamped and trying to fight against King Hezekiah. Taylor Prism, this particular prism, both of which, all three of which are actually in British Museum. Taylor Prism gives a list of items that Hezekiah gave as tribute, similar to the list that the Bible gives. So this itemizes tribute paid by Hezekiah. And then similarly there is another record which also gives a long list of tributes, detailed list of tribute sent by Hezekiah of Judah to Sennacherib. In British Museum there is an entire room allotted, or most of an entire room allotted for the Lachish siege of Sennacherib. Lachish is a city in Judah. Time, how are we doing in terms of time? 12:06. So let me see. Manasseh, king of Judah, recorded in one of the other artifacts. When Babylon comes and captures Jehoiakim, the last of, not the last actually, the one before that, I think, the rulers, we have artifacts outside of the Bible which even tell what kind of food must be given to him. It gives of course the detail that Jehoiakim spelled wrongly there, should have been CH. Jehoiakim was actually a prisoner, he's the king of Judah but a prisoner, and he should be given so much oil, so much whatever else, food. So it's all ration because he's still a prisoner. And we find of course that this particular king was in fact captured. In the Bible we find the detail. On top of that, let me just go with a couple of other points there. Artifacts, Nabonidus cylinder and Cyrus cylinder. Now, so that's Nabonidus cylinder, that's a clay tablet related to Nabonidus, who we see, the Bible calls him a king of Babylon. But outside of the Bible, for a while there has been a bit of a controversy, which is, we know the list of kings who ruled Babylon, no one is called Nabonidus. The last of those kings, or emperors, more accurately, was Nabonidus was the king, which is mentioned outside of the Bible also, but the Bible says Belshazzar, his son, was a king. I don't know if you know the Mene, Tekel, Upersin, in the book of Daniel, the writing on the wall. That was a guy, the guy who was in rulership at that time was a guy called Belshazzar. And he is referred to as the one whose writing was clear, because he disobeyed, because he was wicked, didn't respect the articles of the house of the Lord from Jerusalem, the temple. Medo-Persians attacked him on the same evening and captured him. So that was the transition day or evening between Babylonian Empire moving on to the Medo-Persian Empire. And so from the account you would see Belshazzar was the last king. But outside the Bible we find Nabonidus to be the last king. So the confusion was there. That is where Nabonidus cylinder and the clay tablet related to that, Belshazzar, clarify some stuff. And what we understand is, Nabonidus was a guy who was very involved in moon worship. By the way, this is where Islam, Arab and so on come in, because we find details from artifacts related to him that he frequently visited Arabia, moon worship centers. He was not a sun worshipper like the rest of the rulers. Because he was a moon worshipper, he had to travel long, go to Arabian Peninsula to worship. And while he was away for so long, he still had to have a king, otherwise someone else might take over. That's where his son was appointed as the regent already. So officially, he was still the last king because his son was just a regent. But the Bible gives him as a king. But the Bible goes on to clarify implicitly, this is a hidden gem. And that is the Bible, when Daniel interprets many Takeover been found wanting. When Daniel went on to give the meaning, Belshazzar essentially says, Daniel, you are now the third in this kingdom, a third highest man. Why would he say third? Bible doesn't say that explicitly, and that's why it is a hidden gem. And we find reasons why he would have said that. He is only the second, he is just a regent. He was almost, by the way, co-regent, almost like the king. So he was the second, and Daniel was supposed to be the third. Cyrus cylinder. Judah goes on exile. Northern Israel had already gone on exile to Assyria, and some foreigners were brought into Northern Israel, and that's where Samaritans began to exist as a mixed people group. And then subsequently Nebuchadnezzar destroys the temple in Jerusalem, and he captures people like Daniel and so on. We know that they were, by the rivers of Babylon. The psalm comes, the song and the psalm comes from that background. People were taken on exile away to Babylon, and that is where after 70 years of being in exile, Daniel figures out there is a prophecy that God was going to send us on exile only for 70 years. So he reads that prophecy and then prays. And then it was Cyrus who was mentioned by name even before he was born by Isaiah, a prophet. Isaiah said Cyrus will be your redeemer, he will be the Messiah, the anointed one to save you. He is the one to send the nation of Judah back. And the Bible gives the reason where the Bible says, now in the first year of Cyrus king of Persia, the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled. The Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus the king. So he just motivated him somehow. But then that's recorded in the secular artifact, or I would say extra-biblical artifact, where Cyrus says, a declaration that Cyrus had enabled people to live in peace and has increased the offerings made to gods. Isaiah prophesies that God would speak to him, but he wouldn't even realize that it is God who is speaking. I.e., it is Yahweh who is speaking. And that is exactly what we find here. Cyrus goes on to say, you know what, whoever else wants to serve other gods, please go on. Now it's time for, a benevolent rule. So he sends people back, asking all sorts of people to build their temples and so on. So that parallels the account that is given here, except it applies to a wider people group, perhaps because of what Isaiah said. Okay, cool. So that's where we are now. Let me quickly, 11:15, 12:45. So we still have half an hour. So we are on track. Purely because I skipped a few things. What I'd like to do is, of course, we started late, but I don't want our second session to start late also. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to finish in half more hour, which means I of course skipped a few things, but hopefully you get the idea, which is during Iron Age nation of Israel, northern Israel, southern Judah, plenty of artifacts outside of the Bible to corroborate the historical narration which is in the Bible. Now, let me briefly introduce the challenges that people bring in. Now, one of the challenges is in relation to science, and this is the circular argument. Oh, there can't be God, and therefore this can't be true. So if you find a prophecy, of course it can't be a prophecy, and therefore it needs to be post-dated and stuff like that. So we ignore the science-related argument for now. Does the Bible contradict with science? We're going to have a separate module on that, Bible and the science. We'll deal with Genesis, all the creation account, Noah flood account, and all those things in that specific module. So science-related argument I'm going to skip, and I've given some specific headings in the handout which you can check out in detail later on. I'm going to summarize these things in a much simpler way, which is, so if you look at this particular table, the first major challenge which came up against the biblical narrative is related to that. They saw this as the first stone to be moved. Once they moved this, they essentially began moving many other stones, which were foundations for the Bible. And what was that? It all had to do with Jericho. You might know during the time of Joshua, one of the first cities he destroyed in the nation of Canaan was Jericho. You might know God asked them to circle the city around 7 times, play music and so on, and then the wall would topple down, fall down, and that's exactly what happened according to the Bible. Now, when did that happen is the crucial question, and that is where things begin to change. So, what we find in archaeological artifacts is that Jericho is certainly a city. Even though when I say certainly a city, I mean in the Iron Age and earlier, it was certainly a city. But what we find is Jericho was actually destroyed during it wasn't around for a long period of time. It was actually built the last time around in this sort of period around the Iron Age. Iron Age 1B, around 1000 BC. So this is around the time of this is the traditional. So if you hide this for a moment, please. Pretend this didn't exist. Pretend this didn't exist also. So if you hide those two, essentially around 1000 BC you have Jericho. But then for a long period, I think around 600 years before that, it wasn't there. The last time Jericho was there, especially the wall of Jericho was there, and Jericho with the wall and proper city, the last time it was there prior to that was around 1500 BC. 1500 BC. But essentially what people did, people came up with an idea of chronology in regards to Exodus and Joshua. They came up with some numbers to say this is when this might have happened and so on. And the main thing that was used to fill this particular column here, which is what happened in the nation of, what happened to the people of Israel during that time. To fill that particular thing in, the main thing that was used was the name Ramesses. Because what we find is in the book of Exodus, the Israelite slaves, the city that they were building was named Ramesses. Now God knows how many Ramesses were there, we don't know. This is where history archaeology becomes extremely tricky. For hundreds of years we might get 2 artifacts. We don't get every single, it's not a video camera capturing everything. And so when doing archaeology, we need to appreciate there could be plenty of holes that need to be properly filled in, and so on. The point is, when they saw the name Ramesses, and when they realized the city that the nation of Israel built, or the people group of Israel built as slaves in Egypt was called Ramesses, they essentially said that must have been during his time. Or later, but during his time, earliest. So this is where, during his time, Ramesses II. He is called Ramesses the Great, 19th dynasty in Egypt. And that is why they said Moses and Exodus are all here. Moses was the person who was in charge around plus or minus a couple of decades when the slaves were suffering a lot when building Ramesses, the city of Ramesses, as recorded in the Bible. So Moses and Exodus there. So if you now fill in the remaining stuff, what you find is Moses and Exodus there, early Judges here, Joshua there. And so essentially the challenge is Joshua comes into Canaan during that time, but there was no Jericho to attack. Jericho just didn't exist in archaeology at that time. You see the huge problem? And the problem was mainly because of this. We'll see how we deal with this later. I just like to point out one little thing here, which is this saying that that particular guy was the one after whom the city was named, even during the time of Moses, would be a bit wrong, because the Bible clearly says between the time of the building of the temple in Jerusalem and Exodus and temple in Jerusalem was about 480 years. But if you do 480 years from there, you go a long way after the building of Solomonic temple. So obviously that doesn't match up. So something is seriously wrong trying to match things up. Just one more thing in terms of the challenge. The challenge is, of course, if you go to the nation of Israel, Canaan, you find layer after layer after layer of archaeological artifacts, so you can reasonably date them one after another and so on. But if you go to Egypt, you can do a similar thing. But how do you deal with things when it's talking about cross-country stuff? Do you see what I'm saying? If you go to Egypt, by the order of things that, in the order in which things appear in the artifacts, of course you can get a reasonable idea of chronology and so on. And similarly in Israel. But when it comes to Exodus, when did that happen in regards to early Judges? When did that happen in regards to Egypt? And so on. If you need to match things up, it becomes even more complex. And that is where there was another challenge which was brought in, which is Israel was supposed to be a massive nation. Slaves, but still a nation in Egypt. But according to them, we find no evidence of them in this period. Because they fixed that, now they are essentially looking for Exodus evidence, and Israel and Egypt, Joseph, large group of slaves who are from the nation of Israel, all of that here in the last how many years? 430 years, I think, is what the Bible gives in terms of the number of years of sojourn of Israel and the family in Egypt. And they don't find, well, they don't find what they are looking for. They find other things which are somewhat similar, but not exactly what the Bible talks about. So they say, well, Jericho didn't exist, neither does this. And because that didn't exist, we really can't even compare. Well, it's a circular reasoning though. If you've got the wrong ideas there, of course you won't be able to compare because you've got the wrong synchronization. If you see what I mean. If you're looking at the wrong place, you won't find records corresponding to Exodus. Because that's just the wrong place. When I say place, I mean metaphorically time. In the timeline, you're looking at the wrong period of time. So that's a huge challenge. Jericho was used first, and then, so the challenge which was said was, according to the Bible, a city that never existed at the time was conquered. And so the Bible must be clearly wrong. Someone has been clearly making things up in the Bible, is the challenge. And like I said, in the table I've given a traditional view because this is what many Egyptologists are holding on to today. And one of the problems here is, here's where I'd like to commend to all Christians, all Christian evangelists especially, this mindset, which is, the fact of the matter is, an Egyptologist could be a remarkable Egyptologist, but he's still just an Egyptologist. He doesn't know the Bible. He needn't know the Bible in detail. He might have read the Bible. How many times have you read the Bible in detail? The Bible isn't an easy book to read. So the point I'm saying is, purely because an Egyptologist says something, we don't have to take him at his word. We can still get the details, analyze for ourselves, use our critical thinking, logical thinking, and then try and see if his reasoning is right. Now, in my reading of scriptures, I can clearly see, wait a second, you should have been looking at the wrong place. This is not how things add up. 480 years, where did that go? But that's what people do, and based on that, and that's why I'm saying traditional view, majority people hold, but majority doesn't mean truth in this case because of the subject matter involved. Not all are experts in the different areas they need to be experts in when coming to a conclusion like that. You need to be an expert in Egyptology, you need to be an expert in Israel's history, you need to be an expert in scriptures, and then you should all be able to put these things together. And that's why an expert in one area might not be the person necessarily to give us the truth. Where people like us could coming in, we might not be Egyptologists, we might not be archaeologists in regards to Canaan and so on, but what we can do is collect all the details, and what we are experts of the Bible. And so we can bring in the biblical view and try and see, oh, this doesn't match up and so on. Yeah? With me on that so far? Cool. And so once they have sort of moved those couple of important stones away, if you, just imagine, if you don't have Exodus, if you don't have the nation of Israel beginning in Egypt as slaves, what happens to the nation of Israel? And here's where one thing which Christians might not appreciate when it comes to the Old Testament is, in the Old Testament it is the origin which is crucial. The origin of all of the universe is very important. Theologically, philosophically, if that crumbles down, nothing else holds water. Similarly, in the nation of Israel, the origin. Why should all the nation of Israel be religious? Well, because of 10 plagues, because of Red Sea, because of splitting of River Jordan, and so on. Because of crucial public supernatural things happened, Israel began what it began to be at that stage. The point is, when that is moved away, when you question that origin, essentially have removed the entire history of Israel, apart from bits and pieces of a simple nation just like any other nation across the world. And that's exactly what people have done, including even archaeologists from the nation of Israel. Once they have done that, what they then go on to do is they then look at the Bible. When trying to use the Bible as a historical resource, when doing their archaeology, what they do is, there are three different mindsets broadly. Minimalist, maximalist, moderate. The minimalist guys, they go on to say, I don't trust in the Bible. Wait a second, Jericho wasn't there, Exodus didn't happen, Israel wasn't there in Egypt, so of course this is made up stuff, and therefore I would look at everything as suspicious, except maybe for finding a few different things here and there. That's the minimalist view, and that is what some people still have. Maximalist view are of the Esther decades, where faithful Christians were solid archaeologists. When they went through details, they didn't have that view. They said, well, I know and appreciate the Bible is a very important historical resource, and when I come with that mindset, everything seems to add up. It's not a problem, and so on. So that's the maximalist view. But the point is, because of the challenges raised here, which is going to be our focus right now, because as evangelists, we'd like to train to even deal with the minimalist view. And that's exactly where we are coming in. How do we deal with that? So once they have brought in that mindset to say, you know what, it's similar to the New Testament, where in the New Testament there are people who say, oh, I only care about the red letters of Jesus. Including what Muslims do, but not just Muslims. There are other people, other groups called Jesus Seminar is supposed to be a research group. And there are other groups like that who essentially say, I only go with the red letters. Anything else, if it looks supernatural, I reject. Well, wait a second, in that case you will be rejecting most of the Bible. That will be a circular argument, but that's what they do. And that's what's happening here. Once they have done that, now what they can do after that, which they have already begun doing, is, I know Genesis account is all up for taking. I can redefine the origin of the historical origin of the nation of Israel. And that is where people reject the conquest theory, which is where Joshua and the nation of Israel began, as the people group of Israel began being a nation as a result of conquest which happened as a result of a series of battles and wars, one after another, which is what we find in the book of Joshua. And briefly ignore that Judges part for now. And they're advancing 3, 4 and 5. Or maybe the nation of Israel are just a group of rebelling Canaanites. They were always there, they were from a particular family of any special significance, and they just started rebelling and therefore gained prominence. Social revolution. And another thing is, maybe it's just a silly little group of nomads who just settle down, happen to settle down and then grow as a group. And another extremely weird hypothesis is a mixed multitude, where maybe it's just a group of Canaanites who say, you know what, let's form a new people group. And let's give us a new identity. This is who we'll be. We'll make things up in terms of our past. We'll invent these characters called Abraham, Isaac and Jacob and so on. And we'll do those things for some particular reason. In Israel Finkelstein, one of the prominent minimalists when it comes to the Bible, he's an archaeologist who is still active in the field. This is what he says. He says, Joshua didn't come and conquer Canaan. What he rather says is, what we rather see on the ground is just a natural rural-urban cycle. So the cities which were destroyed, the rural pastoral people groups, and then went out of scene, and then you began having again cities. So that's something he advances. These are challenges we need to face. They ripped the Bible apart. Oh yeah, so that's another important thing. I don't know if you're familiar with this idea at all. Even the first 5 books of the Bible, which are crucial historical books for faithful Christians and Jews, now that they have removed all the foundation, what they now go on to say is, wait a second, I don't think this is one writer writing, or predominantly one writer, namely Moses, writing these 5 books. It's rather multiple different books. And this is where JEPD, we at least know of 4 different sources, and they have been combined together in a few different ways, and that's where the documentary hypothesis, supplementary, and I won't go into the details now, but essentially they were combined, artificially combined in different ways, and that's how we get one unified set of books today. And JEPD corresponds to J being Jahwist or Yahwist. You know, we find in the Bible there are clearly passages which refer to God as Yahweh in the Torah. Whereas there are other passages which over and over again in a broad area refer to him as Elohim, which is the Elohist source, E. And then P is priestly source. We find rich information on what priests must do in the book of Leviticus and so on. And then Deuteronomy's source, which is more of a secular history like source, is the source. The point is, we find different kinds of passages. Well, why can't people write different kinds of passages? I can write different kinds of passages. If I can, why can't someone else? We have got polyglots of all sorts. So that's clearly a very invented, mythical idea. But the thing is, I'll get to the mythical part in the next session. But the point is, people have essentially now said the Bible can't be trusted. It's not from who it claims to be from. So if people say the first 5 books are from Moses, no. We say no, it comes from various different sources. That is how far people have taken this, beginning from that Joshua, Jericho not being there, Israel never having been there in Egypt at the time period they were looking at, and so on. So once they moved those couple of pieces, they essentially began inventing ideas about history, and also inventing ideas about how we need to look at the Bible. So these are the challenges. And now what we've done is just look at the introduction to the challenges. The question to be asked is, when we do the next session, how do we deal with these challenges in a proper way, in a credible way? So that's how we start our next session. Now, any question? So I'd like to open up the floor for question now. 15 minutes. Any question? Alian, are you looking at YouTube chat also? Okay. So any question on the WhatsApp group from trainees? And on top of that, any question from YouTube chat? Both Operation Stephen and Soko.
I'm not live.
Oh, you're not live? Okay. Okay, maybe from session 2 you could be live, JC.
Any questions? Somebody?
Any question?
No, there's no questions on the chat.
No? How about on the floor here? Anything so far?
No, because you said you're going to deal with it in the next session, so I'm waiting for the next session.
Okay, so you're waiting for the next session. Yeah. Any question that you could ask this time? So what have we seen so far? The divided monarchy period. That's the easy part. We find, by the way, the artifacts that I documented here is by no means comprehensive. Exhaustive. The list is not exhaustive. Plenty of other artifacts. Some of it just mention names of a few people here and there. Yeah, I mean, even this we couldn't go through in its entirety. So that's why I haven't given everything here. But Iron Age is where the divided monarchy. Iron Age actually began with the kingdom of Israel, monarchy, right when Saul began, around the time when Saul began. But we haven't dealt with that period so far. Saul, David, we did see a couple of mentions of his name, but apart from that we haven't looked at some other details. But Iron Age, later Iron Age, divided monarchy, biblical narrative is preserved in extra-biblical sources also reasonably well. It's all the boundaries set by the Bible are well respected by the other archaeological artifacts also. There's not much room to play around.
Sorry, could you just go over the consequence and not reason backdate of events?
All right,
So
good.
that is the domestication of camels, the
Yeah,
gun barn, and
yeah.
I think you missed that.
I missed that. Yeah, because I was trying to summarize. I wasn't looking at the document at all. I was only looking at the document when I wanted to see something there. But good. So did you have any particular question, or just wanted to say that we missed that?
Well, presumably what you're talking about there is the fact that these issues seem to relate back to JBD and this by saying actually we know that this happened then, so why is this not reflected?
Precisely. And this is where I really like to point out the circular reasoning. Israel Finkelstein could be a good archaeologist, but the fact that he's a very, very bad philosopher when it comes to dealing with logic is very evident in some of the points he makes. Except unless you pay careful attention, you might not catch that. The fact of the matter is, Israel Finkelstein talks about Jericho, talks of the fact lack of evidence at the period when he was looking at for Egypt, and then he says, essentially, some of the other things like domestication of camels, gum, balm, myrrh, and so on. When Joseph was arrested, when Joseph was taken as a slave, you find details of some of the traded items. You find some place names. You find the fact that even Abraham went to the Philistines in Gerar. I think it was Isaac who went to Gerar to find shelter with the Philistines when there was famine in the land. But even Abraham, apart from going to Egypt during famine, he also went to the Philistines. The Philistines is mentioned. Similarly, Arabians are mentioned. But the challenge that Israel Finkelstein brings in, and many other minimalists bring in, is the Philistines weren't even around at that time as a nation. Arabians weren't even around at that time as a nation. How come the book of Genesis talk about them? But that's how he presents it. Now if you don't watch carefully, you miss the logical flaw there, which is, wait a second, you are assuming Bible is wrong, keeping that away, not even giving it half a chance, so keeping that away, looking at only the other artifacts, and then saying the other artifacts don't say that they were a nation or a people group, and therefore they can't be, and therefore the Bible must be wrong. You see the point? You have ignored them. If you do that to every single artifact, for example, Jehu paying tribute. I don't know if actually Jehu paying tribute to Shalmaneser III is recorded elsewhere. I think it is not in my knowledge, but I'm a Christian evangelist, apologies, not a historian. I know reasonable, I've read reasonable level on this, but I don't think that is the case. If that is the case, if my assumption is right, the point would be, if you ignore that black obelisk of Shalmaneser III alone for a moment, can I then say, like exactly what Ismail Finkelstein is saying, Jehu never paid tribute to Shalmaneser III, and therefore the black obelisk is wrong. Why? Because I just ignore that. I kept that aside for a moment. I don't find that detail in other sources, and therefore I say that can't be true.
Yeah.
You see the problem? If you ignore every artifact, the same principle would apply. Unless, of course, we're talking about exact copies of the artifact. You see, the point is, what he has done is not given a reason to say the Bible is wrong, but rather just given a list of what the consequence would be if the Bible is wrong, i.e. if the Bible is ignored. If you reject the historicity of the Bible, the consequence would be you can't use that to say during Abraham's time Philistines were around, and so on. So as a consequence you find these things, and therefore you would then say the Bible is wrong. But that's where you began. Are you with me on this?
Yeah.
So, but the thing is,
that's because of where he starts his statement. So he assumes, like you said, the Ramesses is the Ramesses dates are the important ones, and so that's why he says then that follows on.
yes.
Usually you're going to go over that in the second section where the dating is
Should be, yeah. So you're making a very important point there, brother, which is this is not a reason, but the other things are reasons.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm pointing to the fact that only this is not a reason. This is a consequence.
Yeah.
But if he was right in the other thing, that would be a proper reason.
Yeah.
And if given that he mentions that as a reason, he then sneaks in consequences as additional reasons, which is quite sneaky.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he realizes that or not. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I don't know how much logic he deals with in terms of being a logician or philosopher. Maybe he's purely looking at things like as being archaeologists. This is where one of the unfortunate things in modern studies is that we don't have much cross-disciplinary interactions. You find guys who know only about their area, and then based on their area, listening to other people's comments, and then just say, oh, you are also saying that, and therefore let me also say creation should be wrong. But then the others are looking at people, including this guy, to say creation is wrong because he thinks creation is wrong in regards to biology. I know in terms of geology it's wrong, and therefore it must be wrong. But he was looking at him, and he was looking at him, so it's all. Only if there was one person who knew both the geological arguments and the biological arguments and the historical arguments, all of them together, he might be able to say, wait a second, this seems circular. You depend on him for your argument, but he is depending on you for his argument. Maybe something like that is happening. Maybe he's not understanding. Regardless, the point is, he's just wrong. Regardless of which route he's taking, he's just wrong. And we'll get into specific details as to why there is a much clearer, well-presented view where the Bible's authenticity would be very much respected. And that's in the next session. Any other question?
Yeah, questions. Yeah. So one is if you can elaborate about the Samaritans and how the Quran gets totally wrong.
Yes. So that's a good point to make. I think Quran talks about Samaritans well before Samaritans even existed.
Please can you repeat the question?
Oh yes, sorry. Good point. So the question which is asked on the live chat is, can I please elaborate on the way in which the biblical narrative of the Samaritans differs from the Islamic narration? And I'm phrasing the question in my own way. just to make it actually much a bit deeper. Otherwise, we'll fall into a pit there. And then, why do I think Islamic view is wrong? For example, if you're coming from a neutral perspective, well, maybe the Bible is wrong. Maybe you don't know which one is wrong. And that is when I'm going to say, no, the Bible's view is virtually agreed upon by everyone apart from Quran. Whereas the Quran, it is just in isolation, claiming its particular view. So Samaritans, according to the Quran, came a long time before when they actually began to exist, according to the Bible and according to all other sources. When did they exist? According to all these sources, when the Assyrians began to invade northern Israel, they essentially exiled people from northern Israel into Assyria and other foreign lands which they had in control. And likewise, those foreigners from those lands, they brought into the northern nation of Israel. And that is where essentially the people group there began to be mixed people group, who are later known as Samaritans. This is where the idea of good Samaritans comes in, where Jesus' view is, you don't expect him to be good, but he is good. And similarly, the woman at Jacob's well, the Samaritan woman that Jesus goes and speaks to. Remember, the lady says, our father Jacob dug this well, but you're supposed to be a Samaritan. And the reason she said our father is because Samaritans also go back to Jacob. They go back to other people group also, but Jacob also. It's a mixed people group. So in her particular case, apparently she's clearly traceable to Jacob also. And the other point is, theologically, the New Testament of course says gospel. The gospel is first to the Jews and then the Gentiles. Why did Jesus preach to the Samaritan woman? If that was the case, even though Jesus clearly said elsewhere, do not go into the towns of Gentiles. And the reason again is Jacob. This is the nation of Israel's descendants. Yeah, as a mixed people group still, but still them. So that's partly the reason. Now the thing is, Islam gets it wrong. Islam talks about, I think Samaritan during the time of Moses and Exodus. I think it talks about how the Samaritan cheated the Israelites to use golden calf. And that's where it takes the Samaritan to. Fundamentally, problem is, virtually everyone agrees, the nation of Israel agrees, the Samaritans themselves agree about the origin, about their particular origin, even though their particular origin is supposed to be a demeaning thing from the viewpoint of the nation of Israel, from Judah. You are not clean. You are a mixed people group, not clean, is the view. So they are supposed to be, they are sort of oppressed in that regard. But even the oppressed are agreeing, yes, that is my history. And that's where you find one of the important sources of the Torah, manuscriptural evidences for Torah, is also the Samaritan Pentateuch. The Samaritan first 5 books. And the reason is, well, because we also were part of the same people group, but of course we had split away at a different point in time. So they agree, Israel agrees, and Assyria and so on, they spoke about the land area of Samaria and so on. Nothing to do with Exodus, nothing to do with Sinai Peninsula and so on. Everything to do with northern Israel, what is today modern northern Israel, plus the Golan Heights and a bit of Syria, a tiny bit of Syria. That's what Samaria is. So virtually everyone agrees apart from Islam. And that is where Islam has a bit of explanation to do, which it doesn't. Where do you get this idea from? What kind of evidences do you have to show? Nothing. So that's why we discredit Islam and the Quran in this regard also. Yeah. Any other question? Yeah?
Yes, okay, so it's a long one.
Would you?
Okay, this one is a bit longer. So, is the God mentioned in the Old Testament automatically the Trinity? So basically not single as God the Father, only for the Old Testament. And then somebody else added, if you can mention the various acts of God that were attributed to God the Father, Jesus as the angel of the Lord and Holy Spirit, or within the Old Testament?
Okay, we have a special module for Trinity, and so I like to sort of keep these questions for that time. Just a quick answer for now. God of the Bible, God of the Old Testament is also a Trinity, and we can see that clearly if we spend enough time researching. But so the answer is affirmative. He is Trinity. More details when we get to that particular module. Now, in terms are there other questions there? Or? Yeah, there are. Okay, so maybe we'll go through that quickly, please. Yeah.
Okay. So the question is Jericho the oldest city in the world or not?
Is Jericho the oldest city in the world or not? Okay, so here's where I don't know, and I don't want to. What I do know was certainly there are a few different cities in the land of Canaan which were well renowned. They were like the New York and London and so on for a very long time, which became nothing later on. Cities like Hazor, Philistine cities, some of the Philistine cities. Another town called, the name escapes my mind.
The classic is Sodom and Gomorrah.
Sodom and Gomorrah, Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah, Zeboim and Bela. For them, we don't have artifacts today purely because God said He wiped them out without recognition, which is what He has done very successfully, which is good news, but also bad news in that we don't have much archaeological artifacts. But for some of the other cities we're talking about, there is solid artifacts to suggest they were very well renowned at that time. So I'm not quite sure. I don't think I would say, based on what I do know for now, I don't think I would say that is the earliest.
And the other thing would be Babel. The fact that
yes.
The fact that there's a tower being built, people were gathered together.
Yep.
And it would have taken a while to do it. You would have thought there would be a city.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Bible mentions, and we're going to look at some of those details in a bit. Shinar, Akkad, Calneh, and so on. So there are a few different cities which we look at. Exactly, very good point, brother. So outside of Canaan, there were certainly very, very old but very prominent cities.
Okay. So another question. Are the Jews in Jesus' time considered to be all 12 tribe remnants?
All what?
12 tribes.
And are the Jews in Jesus' time considered to be remnants of the 12?
Yeah.
It's a complex question. I think the Jews of today and the Jews of Jesus' time were primarily of the tribe of Judah. Primarily. But they were not just that. What we also find in scriptures is that when northern Israel began to be wicked, we find, and when prophets were prophesying, exposing all their wickedness and so on, what we begin also finding is some of the faithful ones from the 10 tribes actually moved into Judah because they didn't want to be associated with the wickedness. So they came in. In other words, today's Jews might very well be, of course, a tiny portion, but could trace their origin to the remaining things also, of course, on top of the more obvious Levites. Where were the Levites present? The Levites were based in Judah, because that's where their duty was, in the temple. And similarly, Benjamin was someone who was, Benjamin's tribe was again very close to Judah. Even back in the days when Judah was just called Judah, it was actually Benjamin and Judah and Levites, all three there. All three tribes there. So quick answer is prominently Jews, but of course Levites and what's the other one I said? Benjamin also, and certainly the other things also, but in a very tiny percent case.
Yeah, next one. Is there any archaeological evidence for the persons mentioned in the book of Job?
In the book of Job? Not in my knowledge. Not for the individuals mentioned in the book of Job, but for the context mentioned in the book of Job, yes. The book of of Job talks about how Job's servants were trading. They had camels and stuff and so on, going all over the place. It gives details about the different animals that Job had. It gives details. Job has 4 friends involved in the book of Job, 3 of whom were not good advisors. One of the younger man was a good guy. And we find details of their ethnic groups, family groups, and they are all historically attestable. So the context is certainly reasonably historical.
Okay, so the last one is if you can recommend resources to study this deeper.
That's a very, very good question. Well, what I like to do, so the question is recommend sources to study these areas in detail. So certainly the first thing is the handout, but I think I've spent many hours to put things together. That's first level, and I skipped many things. So to go through that first in detail, hopefully we'll do more of that through our assessments and so on. But I'm also hoping through God's grace to put together a further reading list. If we can put that together for different headings, so people can choose which one they want to delve into and whatever, spend the rest of their lives learning more of that. Yeah, so yeah, absolutely, coming up, but not yet. Yeah, cool. And the only thing I'd like to add on to that is, one of the other challenges which I haven't mentioned so far is this, which is the corroboration so far are only for the natural events, not the supernatural. No one from Assyria comes in and says, Yahweh did something. Prophet prophesied and therefore it happened. No one says that so far, apart from the Hezekiah related incident, where we can read into the situation. Apart from that actually, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything else. So that's reading into the text, but apart from that, we don't find. So that's another important challenge. So someone can legitimately say, okay, I'm willing to believe in the natural things, all the history and so on, but how about the supernatural? And that is also part of what we're going to deal with in our next session. Okay, with that having said, we still have gone 10 minutes beyond schedule. A half an hour break now for lunch for people who are based in sort of London's like time zone. But we'd start the second session maybe 10 minutes delayed. Yeah? Cool. Thank you.